learning to, oh, make sure you learn and pass that exam just so you can leave here very quickly. Why are we still in this? Why are we basking in this mindset, in this, I'll call it an old, very unproductive mind space? Why?
There are quite a few reasons, actually, but one of them I think is
Welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. So listeners, like I always mention, since 2024 started, I am really excited about the guests I'm bumping into, the guests we are connecting with to get on to talk about the amazing things that they're doing in the education space. And today is no exception. So today I'm going to be unpacking an organization that we spotted, I believe, last year or early this year, if I'm not mistaken. They are the Institute for Advanced Teaching and Learning. And as I was researching them, the thing that stood out to me the most is their core mission, right? So they offer guidance for educators in going from being the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. And for them, it's that making that shift is not an option, and it's the reality we have to grapple with. For them, rote learning practices leave our youth underprepared in these demanding times. And so strengthening the critical thinking and problem-solving skills of our future generations is crucial to their adaptation to the future of work. And I have with me today, a learning science and curriculum specialist who's the lead at IETL. And she's in the person of Nefertiti Puplampu. Let me add a doctor to it. So it's Dr. Nefertiti Puplampu. And she's going to help us unpack what the IETL does. We'll touch a bit on, her background and how she got into the space, etc. So help me welcome Dr. Nefertiti Puplampu. Doctor, welcome to the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate you for creating a platform to talk about these very important issues.
Awesome. I'm really excited to have you here as well. Because it's interesting. It's really interesting. I have you on today. I've been having, very separate discussions with different people within the education space, and common thread, that I picked out is, the fact that teachers are at the center of everything education. And so if we do not take steps to beef up, our teachers in terms of, continuous professional development, value addition, whatever it is, to make sure we put our teachers, our educators in the best possible position to lead the charge in terms of getting the outcomes we want to have through our educational system, then it's just cost 90 at the end. So it's timely I have you on here today to unpack what it is that you do at the IETL. Good, I'm happy to have you here again. Let's jump straight in. I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
So, as you rightly said, my area of specialization is learning science, and I do curriculum evaluation, design, redesign, etc. As far as my background, I have my graduate education is all in education. So I have a master's in education in instructional technology. It's in curriculum and instruction with a concentration in instructional technology. I certified in web programming for that. And my PhD is in instructional systems and learning technologies. I certified with project management. Formal minor in international development. That's technologies for rural sub-Saharan African deployment, the sorts of technologies that can help people in rural areas in this region to maybe leapfrog and get ahead. So my background is in education and technology, but my PhD work is specifically in 21st century teaching, and that is teaching strategies that prepare our learners for the future of work, current world of work, and for the future of work. And so some of the things you mentioned when you talked about IETL's mission, and that is developing critical thinking and problem-solving skills, etc. So that's pretty much, I would say, my educational background as it relates to the work that I do and what we're discussing.
All of that is pointing to the fact that you've been interested in education for quite a while. I want to touch on that a bit. So let me ask this. So what context, I want to ask, what context in your childhood do you believe has influenced the path that you are today, specifically the education space?
It's a really funny question. So I have a story that underpins, I don't know if you knew it when you asked me this question, but
No, I didn't.
I have a story that underpins the work that I do. So when I was a child, so I was born in the United States. We moved to Ghana when I was maybe just before I was 4 years old. So I was in a Montessori school when I was in the States, and then when we moved here, I came to school here. And I remember thinking to myself that there's no way that education has to be this painful, tedious, boring. I mean, the way we used to do maths, and it was just so, there was no attempt to make it interesting. And I was convinced in my soul, I was a very stubborn child, I was convinced that it didn't have to be that tough in order for people to learn. And so, fast forward 20 years later, I went back to the United States for university. I went through school, and then I myself became a teacher. Right after my first bachelor's, I started teaching associate's courses, and I tested out my theory, and I came to find out that I was right. That it did not have to be boring. My classes were they were like parties, but they were amazing. The learning outcomes were actually better than most most of the other sections of the same class. While I mean, we were able to have fun. So I ended up studying this because I'm working on my master's at the same time, right? So I ended up studying in this same area, proving the point that education can be effective while it's fun, only to find out that the most effective education is actually fun because it's engaged, it's minds on. And so I pursued this. I've been teaching teachers to use 21st century teaching strategies since the mid 2000s, 2004, 2005. But then when I came to Ghana, I moved back in 2019. I decided that, I'll try and do the same things here, the same type of teaching and training here. But I realized that we're a little bit, maybe a little bit further behind, but also in a different mind frame. This is an authoritarian society. And so the sorts of things we need to be discussing in order to make that shift are a little bit different from the sorts of things we would discuss in other places. And that has sort of decided some of the structures that you'll see in the institute, for example. But yeah, that's the background, that my rebellion against boring classes is what has brought me here today.
Interesting. And you felt that at 4. Am I correct? At 4 years old?
I would say my earliest recollection of consciously saying this is has to be ridiculous is going to be about 5 years old, because I remember I started class 1 early. I set up 5 instead of 6. And I
Okay.
remember in class 1 just looking around me like, are you serious? Class
So
2
you're
is
able
with
to
a
touch,
the
you're
little
able to touch your ear.
Probably that thing is brain exercise. But yeah, I was out there. They allowed me, and I think I might have been a little bit ahead because of where I was coming from. It was just one of those things. So
Mm,
they
mm.
allowed me to start class 1 at 5 years old.
It's interesting because considering the whole concept of formal education, came, if I am not mistaken, from our colonial masters, etc. We were heavily focused on non-formal education and all of that. And so it's interesting how in 2024 we still have the situation where there's this predominant mindset of executing teaching and learning in a certain particular way that is obviously not suited for the times. I guess some of the pushback they'll give is it's a very rigorous system. One, number two is the fact that it has timelines. So it's like, whoa, once you get into class 1, or if it's class 1 or maybe university level 100, there's a set number of courses that you're supposed to do within that time frame. So we don't have time to be jumping and playing and having fun. It's let's get on with it very quickly, and then we put exam in front of you as an assessment to figure out, okay, well, you're getting it or you're not getting it, and then boom, you move on to the next. If you pass, if you cross that red line, you're going to jump into the next stage. If not, well, we'll find a way to repeat you, and you go over it all over again. Personal story. I remember when I applied for my second degree, it was actually in law. So my LL, I remember entering the class first time. I was so excited about it. I was like, I'm going to learn law and get into the history and all of that. And so I was very interested in the learning bit. I wanted to soak it in. And well, I was slapped very hard in the face that, whoa, 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 time is not on your side like that, because at the end of the first semester, there's going to be exam. And if you do not pass, well, you're going to be kicked out. So it sort of changed my perspective, or no, it changed the mood or the mindset I was in from learning to, whoa, make sure you learn and pass that exam just so you can leave here very quickly. Why are we still in this? Why are we basking in this mindset, in this, I'll call it an old, very unproductive mind space? Why?
There are quite a few reasons, actually, but one of them I think is worth speaking to under these circumstances is something that you said pretty much at the beginning of this. And what you said was the feedback to your concept of thinking that you were going to learn all these exciting things and finding out that there was a curriculum to be covered. The notion that those two things are mutually exclusive, that if you're going to cover a curriculum from beginning to end of term, this is what we need to know, it's completely false, first of all, because you can create learner-centered lessons any length and duration. The difference is not the fact that we're playing. That would be sort of a very lazy way to say what we do in more engaged learning environments. In engaged learning environments, we're not playing. Actually, I won't say we're not necessarily playing, because we're not playing. What we're doing is we only conduct learning activities that engage the mind. No passive activities in a learner-centered classroom. Passive activities are activities like me sitting down listening to you talking at me. That does not engage the brain in ways that cause information to be encoded. When we say encoded, it means it goes from the short term into your long-term memory stores, meaning you've owned the information, has become a part of you. Listening is not one of it. We have actual events that cause encoding to occur. It's not one of the events that causes learning to happen. So that means that when I sit there, when I stand there and talk at you, because I said there's curriculum and I have to cover the whole curriculum. So I will talk from the beginning to the middle to the end. When I do that, you are going to go and study it later some other time, because you won't actually learn it in that moment, because you did not get an engaged event that will cause you to learn it. And this is one of the distinctions that we understand. For those of us who understand brain science, we understand that it doesn't work that way. So you're going to have a more engaged time, not because you're having fun and playing, but because we're doing things that keep your mind engaged. We also understand that if you are, I can use the word entertained, but if you are energized to some extent in the space, your brain takes in information better. And so it is to my benefit, me that I'm trying to get you to be an expert in something, it is to my benefit to make you more engaged. Now, because of a misconception around the two things I just said, the fact that people think it takes so long and you can't cover a real curriculum while doing it in a learner-centered way, making a class engaged is about having fun. It's not about having fun. It's about optimizing learning. It's about making sure that the brain actually does what you want it to do under those circumstances. And lecturing is not a way that happens. And so when you ask that question, why is it not happening? It's because we don't have generally, most of us as educators don't have expertise in the area of how the brain takes in information. We have expertise in the topic we are teaching.
Interesting.
So that's what causes the issue. Is that disconnect.
Interesting. I think you highlighted something that I want to touch on. So from 5 years when you felt, no, this is not the way teaching and learning should go on, and then all the way to you traveling outside and having the situation where you were teaching and then learning at the same time for your master's degree program. Interesting. I'm still coming back. I want to come back to why we are doing things the way we are doing it, to where we are having a situation where at least the generation of teachers I would say I've experienced, we had that regime where a lot of them traveled out, right? They got to experience teaching from other regions, but it's like when they come back, they just go back to defaults. I'm trying to unpack that. Why is it so difficult? Why are we not focusing on, like you said, getting it engaging enough for them, for the students you're teaching to grasp and take away the key salient points?
So on a fundamental level, now, first of all, I don't know. Yes, I don't know that it is the case that people went out and they may have seen slightly more engaged classrooms, maybe a slightly less authoritarian structure where I know everything that you don't know type of thing. Less of that, right? But the truth is, even when I was in school, which I guess I'm not that young, so that was a while ago, but I have been doing a lot of training in the United States for teachers making that shift, right? So I think that even outside, there are lots of places that are still in the process of upgrading what has been the model for a very long time. The model, the classroom model, I stand in front of the classroom, I know everything. I stand there, I tell you everything. You write. When you finish, you go and learn, come back, and we'll take the exam. That structure has been around for a long time, and it started from a time when everybody couldn't even read. There are only a few people who could read. So the only person who can even tell you anything is the one standing in front of the classroom, is the one who knows how to read. Time, moving all the way to now, we've been doing this a very, very long time. So you can almost call it ancient, cultural memory, right? So that's one thing. Okay, let's put that down. The second thing is, there was a period in my life when I had to eat mostly vegan, meaning no animal products, for a period for some medical reasons. And when I tried to make that transition, the challenge was less, what shouldn't I eat? That one was clear. Don't eat animal products. Okay. But the question now became, so what should I eat? The problem was finding the substitutes. And I think that is the challenge that teachers would face in this time, is that we have been doing the same thing since. And today you are saying there's something wrong with it. But I know how to teach. I take the information, I read through, I break it into PowerPoints. I bring the PowerPoints. We touch on each one. I give some 1 or 2 examples. The students write, they go. That's how to teach. So now that you're saying that it's not correct, what am I supposed to do? What should I do? And there's the issue, is the fact that we can say all year that the old ways were not right. But unless we give mastery, expertise in the new ways, then we'll just keep saying it. Besides the fact, even when we go through the trouble of, training in new ways of teaching, the transition takes a little bit of energy. Now, learner-centered teaching is easier for teachers. It is easier on the teacher. Teachers do less work and learners do more, but they like it because they're engaged. Only the learners like it, regardless of the fact that they're doing a little bit more work than sitting down. But the transition to it takes some energy. It takes a shift. You have to think differently, adjust yourself. You can't do it the way you used to. You will only have to make that shift once for each lesson, and then you can now continue. Because there's energy in the transition, that change has to be managed. And so unless we make a concerted effort to train large numbers of people to gain mastery in the new ways of teaching, and then walk out, support, and wait out the process of now us doing this en masse, it wouldn't be so simple to just say, oh, so there are new ways of teaching. Why are you doing the old one? So there are lots of teachers who are now learning at least some new techniques and some few strategies, and they're using them and they're working, and that's happening even in here in Ghana. But I think obviously we have a very long way to go and a widespread issue with this that we're going to have to slowly address by information, training, etc.
Interesting, but yeah, you do make some really salient points that I agree with. The cultural mindset has a very strong role to play. It just takes me back to a conversation I think one of my co-hosts had.
Yeah,
it was about positive discipline, and I mean your analogy of being going vegan for a bit is actually spot on, because there was this whole conversation of, well, when children misbehave, we lash them, we cane them with a cane, right? That's what has been applied for God knows how long. But then you come along and say, no, that's not the way to go. There's something called positive discipline, right? Where you focus on getting the child to, shift their perspective in a sense through guidance. And I'm tempted to use the word soft, so quote unquote, a much softer, deliberate approach to disciplining the child to see your point of view, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you're definitely going to have people, especially in Ghana, well, across the continent, I believe, who are going to be, side-eyeing that concept because they're like, wait, what's that about? So you are absolutely spot on. There is a cultural element that we need to attack face on, and then figure out ways to get people to shift to the new ways, the supposed new ways of doing things. And then we have the conversation from there. So good. I appreciate your take on that. That's pretty awesome. I guess it's the perfect segue into the next question I want to ask. And this is going to touch on, well, the education bit and then your tech background a bit. So I want your brief take on the disruptions and innovations happening in the education space in Ghana and on the continent.
I won't claim to be an expert in the edtech disruptive space per se. But at the moment there isn't a conversation about education technology without talking about AI, just because ChatGPT has sort of changed the way that we do things, and because it has so much to do with intellectual property, it's changed the way that students approach their assignments, etc. as well. Myself, I use these sorts of, GPT style AI engines a lot for various things. As the Institute for Advanced Teaching and Learning, we have this even as well. It's LectureSoft is a teacher assessment and training tool, and it adapts to teachers' skills. So it basically assesses 15 components of teachers' 21st century teaching skills, and then gives them feedback based on their skill levels, the areas where they were stronger, where they're weak. As they continue with the subscription, if they're evolving, the feedback will sort of adapt to their skill sets. And so I myself use AI a lot for positive things. However, the disruption from ChatGPT to me as a 21st century educator, and especially as one who has been advocating for us to move away from rote learning, meaning I've been telling people they should stop asking students to repeat facts to you. Why? Because Google knows all. Everybody has access to Google. It is no longer a needed skill. We don't need to know facts. So asking people to regurgitate facts is not helpful. ChatGPT has brought that to bear so beautifully for me. I like what it's done because it has forced educators to think about the way they're assessing their students. For me, you can't take my exam and use ChatGPT. It won't help you because I've already written the questions so that you have to think through it, and there's no other way to answer. But if you tend to call for things that are just factual or sorts of things that can be replaced by these sorts of technologies, then it becomes a bit complicated. The other thing is that on some levels, we have to adapt and maybe be a bit more flexible in terms of what we allow. And this is partially because education is supposed to prepare you for real life. And in real life before, you didn't have something like ChatGPT to write your letters for you and all those things. So you needed to have those skills yourself. Maybe going forward, we don't need to worry about those kinds of skills because ChatGPT can make sure that you can do that sort of work well. And this is another part of the shift that educators are having to make, just to understand that we don't need to use it means is wrong. Ideally, we should ask ourselves, what are the objectives of this particular course and this particular assignment? And if those objectives are not negatively affected by someone using ChatGPT, since ChatGPT is available in the real world, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Because that's how your job environment would be. You would have access to ChatGPT. And so there's a lot of disruption from the AI end of things in technology in this region and others. In this part of the world, to a large extent, we're not even at the tertiary level, we're not graduating students with a tech skills level that would make them globally competitive. So just that baseline skill set in Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, basic understanding of publishing content to the web, those sorts of things. Ideal or graduates globally competitive. So the tech space is, at the same time, we're happily using ChatGPT all over the place, right? The students are catching on to that one very quickly. So those are sort of the markers I'm seeing in the tech space in terms of education, the things that have come.
Interesting. As we were talking, I was nodding, and in my mind, I'm like, well, we'll probably get to a space where the system will be forced to take a stance or would decide to do things differently because of the many disruptions and innovations that are popping up. It's like we want to have a choice. So like you stated, the whole conversation around ChatGPT and all of the amazing things you could do now, it's in a way would force teachers to, rethink how they go about teaching and learning, right? You get to that space where you'd have to go, okay, what do I want the students to grasp from this session? What are the main learning objectives? And yeah, you're absolutely spot on. It's interesting why or how there's this slow adoption of, the reality of what's happening in the world. I don't know what it is. But, well, I guess we can only hope and pray that we notice the wind that is blowing. So we wouldn't focus on things like getting students to learn facts. So I agree with you when you say something like, Google is there. Google is available for any definition, for anything that is pretty much factual. We can go there and go like, what is A? And then it will give us the definition of A. And we have ChatGPT that's gone on to, in a sense, break it down even further. Can write a whole essay for you and, in a very beautiful way that makes you go like, oh, but yeah, I feel like we'll definitely hit a point where we will be forced to do things differently. Ideally, we should be doing it earlier, but well, I guess it is what it is. We'll probably get it right as we move along. Good, awesome stuff, pretty awesome stuff. I want to jump straight into, this organization that you are a part of, which is the Institute for Advanced Teaching and Learning. Let's talk about that. Where did that come from and all of that?
Okay, so the parent company or institute of IATL was one called the Nefertiti Project. So many years ago, I started doing this education training and consulting back when I was working on my master's. So I started out actually doing multimedia consulting and then started doing training on teachers once I was into my master's program. When at some point I rebranded it the Nefertiti Project and just was doing my education consulting, curriculum consulting, teacher training in use of technology for classrooms, that sort of thing, under the Nefertiti Project. So when I moved, I had this entity, so we registered it here, and it was working in that structure. The model that I was thinking of, because I was thinking I'll come and train teachers, and they'll train other teachers, and then we'll just get this new culture going. I realized that train the trainer model here might not go as well, that it would easily end up sort of deteriorating where the structure that you initially put out was one thing, but it may not maintain its integrity as it went down the line. And that was actually how I decided to develop the software instead. At the same time, I was realizing this dynamic that maybe the train the trainer model from the States might not work. I was also realizing that it was not just in this part of the continent. And so I started to ask that question, that what I need to happen is for a large number of people all at once to become aware of the new constructs, new strategies. And that was how I ended up with this version of LectureSoft. Interestingly, LectureSoft, the software, the initial construct for it was developed somewhere, I want to say 2004, maybe somewhere around there, one of my undergraduate courses. But here, I redesigned it to answer just that question. How do I introduce a large number of teachers to these concepts all at once where there is no degradation in the quality of the instruction? And I figured that if I was keeping them in the software and we were asking them questions in the software, then it would never change because the questions don't change. And if I needed to adapt, I could just have the software adapt to them as opposed to trying to teach other people to keep teaching. And soft as it is now, that's where it came from. And with that, because I was moving out of just the nation or just the locality, it was when I shifted the name of the institute from the Nefertiti Project to the Institute for Advanced Teaching and Learning, just so that it would clearly, brand and identify itself wherever it went, so that it became clear what sorts of products and services were available from the institute. So right now we have 3 products, that is teacher assessment and training software in 21st century teaching practices. That's AI driven and cloud based. The other one is training, in-person and virtual training in the same skills. And the third one is a print product line. There are a few books on 21st century teaching and posters that organizations can put up that have some of the core concepts. What's the difference between the old way of teaching, new way of teaching? And the posters can make you look sort of trendy, right? You buy one of the posters, put it on your wall. But also, if you keep it in a teacher space or faculty space, it reminds people what's the shift, what are we doing differently, and helps to inspire people to teach in new ways. The last thing is there's a card game, a teacher aid card game that has, different technology from 21st century teaching, tips in 21st century teaching, and some reflective questions and a few games that are designed around that. So all of those products are on goal of trying to bring large numbers of educators to this new practice of 21st century teaching, ways that remain high quality, high fidelity to the constructs, the scientific constructs that we're teaching.
I mean, it's pretty awesome. And it's living up to its name, living up to the whole idea of, the 21st century teachers, way of doing things. I especially like the teaching aid card game. I was, as I was researching, I was just looking and unpacking it and I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. So I mean, if you, because I'm like, if you want to transfer, this sort of change model in the classroom, we need to start with a teacher, right? And so if there's a card game and you're passing that on, you're sort of reorienting the teacher or the group of teachers to view things in a certain particular way, they're definitely going to pick from there and then translate that in their classrooms as well. So I mean, yeah. So like I was saying, it's just brilliant, and it's interesting. The initial model of training teachers who are going to pass it on to other teachers as well was not, as seamless as you wanted it to be. Because I've spoken to other people, not necessarily what you do, but then in terms of if you like specific edtech products or conversations around integrating technology into education. And I've seen some entities apply that model and it's worked quite seamlessly. It was smooth. What would you say is the difficulty with that initial approach, which is, passing on that knowledge to teachers, educators, and then they also passing on that knowledge to others as well?
I'm kind of doing a hybrid, right? But
Okay.
the reason because we'll end up working through, even with LectureSoft, we still end up working with LectureSoft certified teachers, etc. But I think one of the reasons for me is that that this work is, I studied some of these 21st century teaching constructs in my master's. I studied some of them in my PhD program, and I'm coming from learning systems background. So I think the level of expertise that the level of insight that we're trying to transfer is easily diluted. So it's easily even this is interesting. Even when I was redesigning the software at a point, I have a really good product web development manager, and he took the questions that the software asks you, these questions to evaluate your teaching. As he said, he just had them sort of cleaned up, put maybe some AI, some other ideas, and brought them back. He was like, "Oh, can we adopt these?" And I had to tell him no. And he's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm 100% sure no." Because somebody might not notice that you're asking a different concepts, that construct. And I realized that what I've done is I'm attempting to simplify, I've worked to simplify concepts in learning science, in actual brain science, and simplify them into just strategies and everyday strategies and action. But the underpinning science isn't that simple. I've just simplified it in the ways that and so if you apply it and it's not quite that, somebody who hasn't studied that brain science might not be clear that it's not what they've applied. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Makes sense. Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense.
So I think that was what so that was what I realized when I handed it over, is that I very much simplified it. It doesn't seem very, very complex, but when you shift it, you won't realize that you're not still talking about the same things. And so I think that the only difference that using LectureSoft instead of just the construct I was going to use was because there's a piece of software that people can subscribe to for a really affordable amount, just monthly, it still maintains an evaluation of those same practices based on the same principles, the same way that had I not been standing there, my product developer, like I said, he's excellent, would have felt like, oh, I've optimized the questions, I've made some shorter, I've just made them more succinct or something like, and be thinking he's measuring the same psychological constructs, but they're not the same construct. And that happens too easily in what it is that I do. So then I had to explain to him. When I explained, he said, I understand. Wow, okay, I guess I can't do that. But that sort of thing happened when I first started. And that's why so it's not that we won't be training, we still will have to, train people to train people. But in combination with the software, it means that their evaluation is still happening at a central location and that we still are able to maintain that evaluation has that authenticity, and we will be in a better position to track when certain ideas have been turned into something that they're not.
Absolutely makes sense. You explaining and I say, yes, I get it. I absolutely get it, because it's such that the moment if you like, one branch gets diluted or one bit gets diluted, then the whole thing just collapses. And you don't want that ever, especially what it is that you're doing. Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. I wanted to ask you very quickly.
And the problem, you see, one person would make the mistake, and then that person is like a branch in a tree. That mistake now propagate. But the person they're teaching has no connection back to us, you see, and so there'll be no way for me. So that arm could all be completely misconstruing something, and I would have no way of knowing. But with the software, everybody subscribed to it. If they keep evaluating themselves in LectureSoft, and LectureSoft is responding to then we can maintain that. And that was what came to me when I first started realizing, well,
I could lend you the point you are making to so many things around us in our world today. But yeah, I'll just stick to it here. Yeah, you absolutely makes sense. You don't want it to be diluted in any way, shape, or form. It has to get to the end user in its purest form, and that's what we want.
so that it has power. Yes.
Exactly.
They'll notice when they use it the right way. They'll notice. Don't be bringing certain things saying, "Oh, but it doesn't work for it." It will have power. They themselves will see it. But if somebody has changed some parts and understood it some other way or brought it, you think there's an issue with it when it's not really the construct.
Right. I mean, just so it has power, we'll leave it at that. Just captures everything. So
Yes,
it makes sense.
have power.
Makes sense. I want to touch on, so with what it is that you put together and you are rolling out, how is market penetration like?
So, as I said for what we're doing now, I'm actually not yet rolling on the larger vision. I've been really, really busy developing all of these products and a very involved position in a university that made it challenging to work on both. But the goal for, at least for the software, is to effect impactful change. The reason why we went to the software as opposed to just training trainers, like I said, to keep it from getting diluted, also because of a recognition of the scale of the problem. It doesn't really help me if you have 5,000 teachers in your institution, let's say it's a large university, something like that, and I go and do training for 25 of them. Now, 25 of your teachers are very aware of modern day 21st century teaching practices. It hasn't really helped us. So the idea there really, our preference is to sign up school districts, ministries of education as the smallest unit, not to sign up individuals or schools. We'll take schools, especially schools that are early adopters, schools who are interested in technology so that they can help us, in those earlier stages of the software to develop it, etc. So those are who we've been working with. But really the goal is to work with large numbers of teachers all at once so that we can have those light bulbs go off. Remember, you asked me earlier in this conversation, why is it that we're still doing things this way? Is because it's a wide scale issue and it's a wide scale awareness. We want people to get the awareness in thousands of human beings at once, getting day-to-day hands-on tips as to how I can do this differently. If I want to do 25% new way of teaching, I can do 50%, I can do 75%. And I have at my fingertips in ways that are clear to me how to do that through the software. So the goal, really, the model is not to sell to schools, individual schools, or to individual humans. Is to try to get large units of large numbers of teachers to all become aware at once.
My brand marketing brain is just flying off the roof, and I'm thinking, okay, so then one of the big ones would be to focus on awareness, right? Brand awareness, making them know that, oh, there's actually an institute here that allows that if we connect to can make this happen for us, right? So Interesting. It absolutely makes sense. So once you're doing it in bits, refining, fine tuning the products that you have, etc., testing it out, rolling it out in bits, just so that when you get to that position where getting to the stage where you focus on brand awareness, shout and scream as loud as possible to get people to know that, hey, this is us and this is what we do. And then there's the other bits that's you're taking things slowly, fine-tuning the product, getting it to the state, testing it out, getting information and data as much as possible, just so that you have some sort of evidence to work with, etc. Sounds good. Okay, so with what you've done so far, I like to hear success stories. And already just putting this together is a huge success story, because listen, putting this together, I don't even want to go into the countless hours and sleepless nights, etc.
Oh my goodness.
I guess, wow, I can only imagine. Trust me, I'm dipping my toes a bit into coming up with this edtech product, and boy, oh boy, it is something else.
It's not easy.
So I can only imagine you've done an amazing job with putting all of this together. And I mean, just looking at it, it's very impressive stuff. Listeners, if you're listening, please do well to check iatl.online. And you see what I'm talking about. There's some amazing. The website is incredibly user friendly. Everything here is straight to the point. You get to to know and understand what it is that Nefertiti is talking about. So yeah, I like success stories. So with what you've done so far, and you introducing it to the market in bits, are there any standout success stories that you'd like to share with us?
So at the moment, like I said, I think I might be one of those measure four times, cut once type people. I'm a researcher
Okay.
fundamentally, so I'm not rushing.
Okay.
I'm in the process of gathering data. But some of the so the design was highly strategic. As you know that I did sort of interface design, etc., and UX design is in my master's program. So the design combining both the learning side about the goal was very, very intentional. And when I did my first round of testing, I had about 20 users. The second round about 65. And vis-a-vis the way things are being done right now in terms of best practice, you yourself reflect about how you teach. That was the goal of doing it in that way. Instead of trying to stand in front of people and tell them something which to them is so alien and different, that's not how anybody they know does it. And you are saying they should do that. So the point was for it to create self-reflection. Now, what was beautiful about my first round was almost everybody who, because the app was like, it really made for, because that's what answers the question you asked earlier. Why are we still doing things this way? Is because that's what is part of our culture. And it's going to take quite a bit of reflection in order for us to be willing to embrace something outside of that. But one of the things that I thought was so cool was one of the people I had in one of the early rounds. Later on, I upgraded that version. And so I moved it. And I didn't realize this teacher was still in the software. And he messaged me. He said, oh, he went back to go and look at. Apparently, every time he's doing a lesson, he goes back to check the lesson he's designing against the lecture software to see if his lesson is aligned. And so that was, another point. Besides the normal feedback you get when you teach 21st century teaching practices, you get that feedback. The students are more excited, people are more engaged. Even if people watch me educate, you get the same feedback. People are like, wow, this is a much more interesting way to look at things. Or sometimes I get feedback that just says, oh, I'm completely changing the way I approach my teaching because I've been enlightened. I'm looking at something different. Sometimes without me even just saying anything, but just sort of demonstrating how things go. So there's a lot of success. There always is around these sorts of things because, like I said, it's us gaining more truth on how learning happens. And that's helping us to do things differently from the way that we always have. Hasn't necessarily been informed by the research, right?
Yeah, I guess on a certain level, you have to be at the center of creating something and then rolling it out to get the joy that comes with, just even one person, just telling you, oh, this is great. Like, I didn't know this existed. This had completely changed the way I looked at this particular thing I was doing. And so I could sense that in your voice, just getting that feedback from, oh, okay, so we've put this, the lecture soft available, you try, you answer the questions, gives you a detailed thing, and somebody picks it up, goes, oh, okay, so I've been doing things this particular way, but oh, there's something I can, if you like, mark it up to sort of figure out if I'm doing the, things the right way or the 21st century way, So I can relate. Let me put it that way. I can absolutely relate to what it is that you're saying and the joy that comes with getting that even feedback. It just warms your heart in so many ways than one. This has been incredibly fantastic. It's crazy how time flies when you're having a very chill, fun discussion. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our conversation. So I want to give you the opportunity to give us some last words to land this beautiful plane of conversation that we had. Any last words?
Sure. I'm actually quite excited about the times right now. I'm in conversations with a few national bodies about teacher training for here and some state level ones even in other countries. So it's an exciting time. I'm doing some versions. This version of the software should be absolutely amazing. So it's just really good times. I'm excited about the feedback, and I just want to make sure that everybody is fully aware that I am always open to have conversations, inputs, connections, whatever people feel, should be part of a movement, because it really is about a movement. As you can tell, you notice that I'm not, you won't really hear me sounding like a marketer or a product person. I'm more about the goal of what we're doing and the changes on the continent. And that's why I'm taking my time so much. It's not about, these aren't the sorts of things we worry about speed with. We worry about impact. And so I'm open to, like I'm saying, I'm open to input. and collaborations, those people who can see a larger vision for a really wide region and major impacts for the success of the continent as a whole.
Dr. Nefertiti Puplampu, thank you so much for joining us on the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. These are my very brief observations. I want to say this, that your optimism and passion is evident and it's very infectious. And it's a blessing to have you and your organization in the education space. Thank you. Thank you for who you are and what you do. Please keep that fire burning, because the education problems you have are very huge. So please keep that fire burning and continue to make that, transformational change and impact one teacher at a time. Thank you for hopping on with us today.
Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. And to our listeners, thank you. Thank you for listening to this rather exciting episode. 2024 is going to be good. It's been good so far. We are having really exciting guests who are popping in. Tune in for the next episode and stay safe. Cheers.